Effects and consequences of domestic violence. Domestic violence dramatically affects future generations, and children are also affected, together with their mothers, by the recurrence of this pattern not only in their own families but also in society as a whole, creating a vicious circle with a clear parallelism between violence inside and outside the growing environment. Tolerance against women and girls at family level has an impact on society in general. Studies identifying domestic violence as a major element of many social issues, such as street children, child exploitation, prostitution, trafficking in minors and people in general, etc. Moreover, public health suffers serious physical, psychological, and social effects on women and girls, even throughout their lives. Also, domestic violence affects the progress of all societies, women being considered vital for lasting development. Inhibited or threatened, women cannot contribute to the social and political life of a society to their potential. Domestic violence affects the functioning of the whole family in all its structures, thus becoming less transparent and open to the immediate social environment, extended family, neighbors, friends, or colleagues. Hence the social isolation trend, characteristics of the dynamics of domestic violence. In addition to social stigma, the self-deprivation of the victim occurs, accentuating the incapacity to make changes. By communication, there are attacks against each other, and in a professional environment leads to a superficial relationship or a role assumed within the hours of service. The main function of the family, raising children, is distorted, the consequences being dramatic and long lasting. Invariably, domestic violence does not only affect the victim, but affects all family members, especially children, either directly or through incapacitation of their mother's concentration on them. In a violent climate, the basic needs of children, safety, orderly life, and love are deeply neglected, and parental roles can no longer be achieved. A victim's husband is less able to provide the child basic care such as food, house, hygiene, clothes, physical health, or to protect him from injuries, accidents, physical or social hazards. Overwhelmed by shame for what is happening to her, the feeling of failure is in the most important interpersonal, terrorist, self-esteem relationship. The woman is no longer able to play any of these roles of family life, which explains the high number of accidents households where children are victims. Comprehensive investigation into cases of neglected children revealed the violence in their homes, which no longer leaves the child for normal development. The effects and consequences of domestic violence are found on several levels, affecting the quality of life and the safety of the victims. The consequences are negative, serious in the short or long term, refers to the impairment of physical and mental health, professional life, social life, or economic status. It is false that domestic violence is particularly encountered in the bottom of society, that victims are weak people who are unable to leave an abusive relationship, or even that the abused person could stop abuse if they were enough. It is true that financial problems are a risk factor and can cause such a problem. Statistics show that the problem is equally found in low and middle and high social classes. As a rule, the family keeps appearances in public, aggressions happen behind closed doors, and sometimes the victim does not even admit to himself that he is being abused, especially psychologically. Hence, the difficulty of institutions and specialists identifying and intervening in these cases. Victims' refusal to ask for help prevents specialists from taking real action to combat the phenomenon. The consequences do not only affect the victim, but also the whole family, children, and the socio-professional environment. Family violence raises major health risk with immediate effects on physical and mental health, increasing the risk of serious and chronic health damage, low self-esteem through exposure to associated stimuli, interpersonal relationship, and psychological disorders. This syndrome occurs when the person feels unable to resist the stress of the situation and withdrawal is impossible. The person loses the feeling that he can control the situation, the feeling on conditioning adaptation to reality. There is hypersensitivity to violent events that create an expectation of aggression and preparation for defense and self-protection against aggressive reactions. But domestic violence is the result of a person's need to show the other who is in control. Family violence does not provide a positive relationship model, and children will not learn to find ways of peaceful resolution of problems. From the example of adults, they will learn to respond aggressively, to fight, and to use vulgar language. Children can easily fall victim to domestic violence if they are hit, even by mistake, by the violent parent or raised in a potentially aggressive environment. Most suffer from stomach, head ulcer, and sleep disturbances. Domestic violence determines the children's delays in development or regression, poor school performance, low ability to adapt to new situations, poor self-esteem, difficulties in networking. Also, from a physical perspective, they experience fear, anger, mistrust, guilt, and helplessness. Many of whom will run away from home, aggressive behavior, and language. When the child is affected from the earliest ages, the child should be helped to go through it by speaking openly about how he feels when someone is violent in the family, explaining to him that violent people have various emotional and behavioral problems, that they need specialized help, and that physical abuse is never worthwhile, however much the victim would be wrong. Furthermore, it is important to avoid leaving the child to witness domestic violence and explaining that he is not guilty of the violent way that someone in the family chooses to behave. Stand up for children. There's no excuse for child to abuse.